أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. Today we are going to start with verse number 53 of the Surah At-Taubah, which has been translated as penitence. And this is the 9th surah of the Quran. And the part, as it is known in English, or the juz, as it's known in Arabic, or the sipara, as it's known in Persian and other languages, that is number 10. And inshallah, we'll be soon finishing number 10 and going on to the 11th. That means we've almost covered 1/3 of the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قُلْ أَنْفِقُوا طَوْعًا أَوْ كَرْهًا لَنْ يُتَقَبَّلَ مِنْكُمْ إِنَّكُمْ كُنْتُمْ قَوْمًا فَاسِقِينَ. Say whether you spend willingly or unwillingly, it will not be accepted from you. Indeed, you are a people who transgress. So, Qul, as we know, mostly when it comes in the Quran, it is addressed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he is being asked to say something either to the unbelievers or the believers. So here it is being said, the Prophet is being asked to say to the hypocrites who do not want to go in a holy war, whether you spend willingly or unwillingly. You see, at that time there was no common treasury, no state treasury, and the government did not have enough funds to provide for these battles or wars. So whenever there was a call for a holy war, then everyone volunteered with their lives as well as their wealth. So here the hypocrites were making excuses because they did not really believe and they did not really want to participate. So here it is being addressed to them, whether you spend willingly or unwillingly, it will not be accepted from you. Indeed, you are a people who transgress. Transgress is that they break the bounds, they break the limits, and they morally also, they do not do the things which they are supposed to do. They are iniquitous. And this is mainly about the hypocrites who were pretending to be Muslims, but since they did not have real faith, they were trying to make all kinds of donations to save themselves or to save their wealth. But there were some hypocrites who brought donations for the war, but it was not accepted from them because they could have gone physically, they were strong and they could have gone, but they did not want to go. They did not want to risk their lives. And there is the case of somebody called Judi bin Qais, and he made a very unusual kind of excuse. He said, I'm very weak in the matter of women. I cannot resist women. And the women of Rome are beautiful. So it will become a trial for me, and therefore this is the reason why I cannot participate in the jihad. This is about the Ghazwa Tabuk, and this was being fought against the Eastern Roman. It was intended for the Eastern Roman Empire, and they were going to go up to Syria, but they did not need to do this because the other party did not come out to fight them. وَمَا مَنَعَهُمْ أَن تُقْبَلَ مِنْهُمْ نَفَقَاتُهُمْ إِلَّا أَنَّهُمْ كَفَرُوا بِاللَّهِ وَبِرَسُولِهِ وَلَا يَأْتُونَ الصَّلَاةَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كُسَالَى وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كَارِهُونَ. The offer of their shares has not been refused, except that they denied God and His Messenger, and they do not come for prayers except unwillingly, and they do not spend but grudgingly. So when some of them who were trying to save their lives, but they brought some donation, and this was not accepted for them. It is called a share here. And this was a refuse because they had denied God, they did not believe in the one God and His Messenger, they did not believe in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They believed in some other prophets who came before, like up to Moses. The Jews believed in prophets up to Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. The Christians believe in Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. But after that, they denied Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So since they had denied God and His Messenger, and they do not come for prayers except unwillingly. That means they did come to the prayer congregations, but since they were not really believers in their hearts, they came very lazily, these hypocrites, and just for the show of it, to show that they are Muslims and therefore they are taking part in the congregations. And they do not spend but grudgingly, that is, they spend very reluctantly in the cause of the Muslims, whatever the cause might be. And according to some commentators, the deeds of the unbelievers, like if they have done some good deeds, like they have fed the poor and they have kept their family relations intact and so on and so forth, even then these good deeds will not avail them anything in the hereafter, because the first and foremost prerequisite is belief in the one God and in His Prophet, all His prophets, and especially up to the last prophet. The definition of a Muslim is somebody who believes in the one God and he believes in all the prophets, especially in the last prophet of his time. So if a person was alive in the time of Hazrat Musa a.s. and he believed in him, then we think of him as a Muslim. فَلَا تُعْجِبْكَ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُمْ إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُعَذِّبَهُمْ بِهَا فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَتَزْهَقَ أَنفُسُهُمْ وَهُمْ كَافِرُونَ. Do not become enamored by their wealth and their children. Indeed, God desires to punish them through these in the life of this world, and also that they should give up their souls in a state of disbelief. So here the believers are being told not to envy the unbelievers all their wealth and their children, because children were also a source of strength, and this made these people feel superior. But the believers are being told not to envy them for these things, because God will punish them through these things. And how will they be punished through these things? That is, as a trial, they might move even further away from God, because, sometimes people are so involved with their children, their families, and also with their wealth that they forget about God. So this can become a trial for them. And sometimes people go and do all kinds of wrong things just to please their children. Or they might not bring up their children in the right manner. All these things will make their children a trial for them, and also their wealth. If they're not spending their wealth in the right manner, then this also becomes a trial. And they might even move further away from God, so this will become like a punishment, which will lead them to disbelief and punishment in the hereafter. At the spiritual level, being attached to material things is a form of suffering, because a person who is totally attached to the material things of this world, his possessions, material possessions, then this is a kind of suffering, because that person lives in fear of losing these things, because he does not acknowledge that these things have come from God. They are a gift or a blessing from God. So he's always obsessed about those material things, and he's always in fear of losing them. So this is how it can become a suffering. وَيَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُمْ لَمِنْكُمْ وَمَا هُمْ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنَّهُمْ قَوْمٌ يَفْرَقُونَ. They swear by God that they are with you, even though they are not with you. In fact, they are a people who are scared. They are scared of what? They are scared of fighting with the Prophet ﷺ in the holy wars, and they are scared of fighting with the believers. Yahlifuna is like swearing an oath. They swear oaths because they did not have faith in their hearts. So when a person does not have real faith, then he has to try to convince the other person by swearing all kinds of oaths. And also one another reason was the hypocrites. Why they became hypocrites was because they had nowhere else to go. And they thought, since they had to live in Medina, they thought they could convince the Prophet and his followers of their sincerity by pretending to be Muslims. But there were times when the Prophet was told about their hypocrisy. Here again it is being said that they swear by God that they are with you, that they are not supporting the enemy, but on the quiet they would either give away the secrets of the believers or do something else to confuse the issues that were being faced by the believers. لو يجدون ملجا أو مغارات أو مدخلا لولوا إليه وهم يجمعون. If they could find a refuge or a cave or a hiding place, they would rush to it like a fugitive. So that means they are only living in Medina, in the state which the Prophet had set up, which is a Muslim state. And if they could find another place, like even a cave or some other refuge on a mountain top or a hiding place under the earth, then they would rush to it like a fugitive. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَلْمِزُكَ فِي الصَّدَقَاتِ فَإِنْ أُوتُوا مِنْهَا رَضُوا وَإِنْ لَمْ يُؤْتُوا مِنْهَا إِذَا هُمْ يَسْخَطُونَ. There are some among them who criticize you about the distribution of alms, that is of charity. If they are given some of these, they are happy, but if they are not given any, they are inflamed, they become angry. The commentators say that this mention here of distribution of alms refers mainly to zakat or zakah and ushr. Now we know that in the Quran we are told to pay the zakah and on any of our wealth which has been lying there for a whole year. But the percentage that one has to give away is not mentioned in the Quran. So this was taught to us by the Prophet, and we are told that you have to give 2.5% of your wealth in charity. In fact, it's not charity, it's a tax. Because charity would be something that would earn us some kind of reward. But this is not going to earn us a reward. In fact, if we don't give the zakah, then we will be punished for it. So it's an obligation and it's a tax. And there is another tax which is called the ushur, and that is the tax which one has to pay on agricultural produce or agricultural lands. And this has a much higher percentage of a tax. It says 10% on natural irrigation, like if one's agricultural lands are in an area where you get enough rain at the right time, then you pay 10% of what you have earned on it. But if you are depending on artificial irrigation on which you have to spend something or the other, then you are supposed to give 5% of your earnings. And here it was being said in verse number 58 that there are some who criticize you about the distribution of alms. So by that time, the state of Medina was receiving zakat and ushur and all these taxes from the citizens of that place. And if the hypocrites were given something, if they were really needy and they were given something, they were happy. But if the Prophet knew that they were not needy, then they were not given any charity, and then they were very unhappy and also they became very angry. Now, there's another thing about zakah. Some people think that it can only be given to Muslims. We'll soon be reading about the list of all the items for which we can spend zakah. But I have read that Hazrat Ali, Karamallahu Wajho, one day when he was the Khalifa, he was going somewhere and he saw a Jewish man who used to be very well off at one time, and he saw him begging. So he went up to him and he said, "What is the matter? What happened?" And he said, "Now I have become too weak and old and I cannot take care of my finances. So this is what I have been reduced to." So Hazrat Ali ordered that the Baitul Mal or the treasury, the state treasury, should now take care of all his basic expenses, which means that all the citizens of any country, of any Muslim country, no matter who they are, they also should be given a part of the zakat if they are really needy. وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ رَضُوا مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ سَيُؤْتِينَا اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ وَرَسُولُهُ إِنَّا إِلَى اللَّهِ رَاغِبُونَ. If only they had been pleased by that given to them by God and His Messenger, and had said, "Sufficient for us is God, God will give us from His bounty, so will His Messenger. Indeed, towards God we are fully inclined." If these people had said these words, if the hypocrites, they were really unbelievers or disbelievers, they had said these words, then God would have been pleased with them, but they were always grumpy about something or the other. So according to a spiritual explanation, one should be content with whatever God has given them, because it is the hypocrites who are happy only when they get what they want. That means we should not be happy only when we get what we want, but we should be happy at whatever God has given us, because we should realize that what God has given us, what He has intended for us, is the best thing for us. And this was the attitude of the companions. Also, it describes the proper attitude of desiring the bounty of the world as long as it leads to God and not for its own sake. That means if you want some fancy thing that you desire, and if this is going to lead you to God, then this is good for you. But if you just want it because you can show off that you have such and such a thing, and it doesn't lead you anywhere spiritually, then we can assume that it is not good for us. And any supposed blessing which removes a person away from God and His Prophet is actually a punishment. And any suffering which brings one closer to God and His Prophet is actually a blessing. This is why some of the great Sufi masters or leaders, guides, whenever they suffered some kind of pain or whatever they suffered, they used to thank God for it, because they used to say, thank God that He has remembered us. They thought that whenever suffering came to them, it was from God and it was a blessing from God, because that would take them closer to Him. إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. Obligatory alms. Now this whole verse number 60 from Surah At-Taubah, which I have just read out, is about the different people to whom or causes for whom you can spend your zakat. So obligatory, and this zakat is obligatory. Obligatory alms are for the poor. In the Arabic it says, Lil-fuqarai wal-masakin. Now different commentators have different interpretations of who come under fuqara, that's faqir, and who come under the masakin. And some say that fuqara are those who have something or the other, but masakin are the absolutely poor who have absolutely nothing. Then the amilina alayha. And yes, and some commentators also say that the masakin are those who are the self-respecting needy. They are needy, but they are self-respecting. They do not go about asking people for things. Amilina alayha, those who manage the affairs of the zakat. Now, if the zakat is being dispersed by the government, then naturally they need officials and other things, and an office, I suppose, and all these things can be managed by spending that zakat that the government has collected. But in some places, the officials start spending lavishly on expensive cars and such things, and that, I think, is not quite right. And also, in order to win over hearts means that, there might be some people who are new Muslims who, even if not extremely needy, they deserve to be helped, because they are a little insecure when they are new Muslims. Then there could be disbelievers who could be reconciled with Islam. If you feel that this person can be helped with the zakat and then he will move towards Islam, he can also be given zakat. And then there are some Muslims who are outwardly Muslim, but they have a lower level of belief. Then if they are helped and made to feel secure, then they might have a stronger faith. Then there are followers of leading idolaters, but who might be influenced to join Islam through being helped with the zakat money. Then according to some commentators, this refers to Christians or Jews who accepted Islam. And also it can mean the elite of certain tribes whose relations had to be cemented after the Battle of Hunain. Then also it means all the groups in Islam not established until and unless they received payment. So, there were some groups who said, if you help us like this, then we will accept Islam. And according to Ibn Arabi, who is the great Sufi master of Spanish Spain, he says that when Islam has become strong, then there is no need for all these, different people to be given zakat. This is only in order to strengthen Islam. The next one is in the cause of God. That means cause of God means any good thing, that any cause like a charity who's trying to teach, propagating education for needy students and something like that, or those in need. Then also then the travelers, those in need when they are far away from home, even if they are rich, but they are far away from home and they have no means of getting money from home, then they also have to be helped. And then there is another point which everybody has heard about, that one cannot give zakat to the family of the Prophet. That is, they are known as the Sayyids and sometimes they are known as the Sharifs. But Imam Abu Yusuf, he is a student of Hazrat Imam Abu Hanifa, he says that the family of Bani Hashim, that is the Prophet's family, the family of Bani Hashim can give their own zakat to the poor of their own family. That means that maybe other people cannot give them zakat, but the people who are also Sayyid, they can give their zakat to the Sayyids. So I think there are about 8 different categories in which zakat is valid. Win over hearts, then to free the slaves. Now, in the present time, there is no slavery, at least we think there is not. There might be in some pockets. And in order to free the slaves, one can give one zakat. So I think, this is my own interpretation, that I think that if a person has been caught and imprisoned unjustly, and if he doesn't have the money to somehow get a lawyer or whatever, he has to pay a fine or something, then one can help him with his zakat, with one zakat. It can also be given to help pay off debts. Now, debt, it means if somebody has borrowed money and is not able to pay it back, then one can help a person to pay off his debt. But if a person is in the habit of overspending and he just keeps borrowing money and then he comes and says, I'm in debt, please help me out, then that is not really valid. And the cause of God, of course, any good cause, either for the religion or for a social reason, that can be valid reason. This has been made incumbent upon you by God. God is the all-knowing, the wise. So this is verse number 60 from Surah At-Taubah, which gives the details of where one can spend one's zakat. وَمِنْهُمُ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ النَّبِيَّ وَيَقُولُونَ هُوَ أُذُنٌ قُلْ أُذُنُ خَيْرٍ لَكُمْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَيُؤْمِنُ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. And among them are those who hurt the Prophet and say he can be easily swayed. In Arabic, the word here is that he is uzun. Uzun actually means ear. That means he just, whatever he hears, he believes in it. They are talking about the Prophet ﷺ. And he's very gullible, that he does not, check out whatever we tell him, but whatever we tell him, he believes it. Say now, qul. Again, the Prophet is being asked to give them an answer. He listens to what is good for you. He believes in God and believes in what the believers say, and is a mercy for the believers among you. According to Allama Razi, he does not hear the evil, he hears the good, or he hears something in which he can do some good. But these people were trying to find fault with Islam and the Prophet and everything that goes along with the Prophet. Therefore, they came up with this kind of objection. He listens to what is good for you. He believes in God and believes in what the believers say. And that means that he does not believe in the hypocrites. He knows when somebody is trying to mislead him. He's always informed by God. Angel Jibreel used to come and inform him whenever somebody was trying to mislead him or harm him. And he is a mercy for the believers among you. As for those who hurt the Prophet of God, for them is a painful punishment. One thing I wanted to make clear here is the word sadaqah is used for zakah. Now, Today, after they say that the laws became clear, the word sadaqah was used for voluntary charity and zakat was used for obligatory charity. And the sadaqah is not controlled by any kinds of rules and laws. You can give as much sadaqah as you want and whenever you want. And no matter how much wealth you have, it's up to you. But the zakat is something which is controlled, and it is essential to pay one's zakat. And if one doesn't pay the zakat properly, one has to calculate exactly how much one has to pay, and if one doesn't do it, then this is a case for punishment. يَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ لَكُمْ لَيُرْدُوكُمْ وَاللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَحَقُّ أَنْ يُرْدُوهُ إِنْ كَانُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. They, that is the hypocrites, swear by God in front of you in order to please you. But God and His Messenger are more worthy of the effort to please if they are true believers. Now here it is being said that the hypocrites are always swearing oaths because they try to convince others, the believers, that they are telling the truth. And here it is said that in front of here it means the believers as a whole. But God and His Messenger are more worthy of the effort to please. That means they should make an effort to please the Prophet and an effort to please God. How can one please God? By following all the obligations that one has to adhere to. أَلَمْ يَعْلَمُوا أَنَّهُ مَنْ يُحَادِدِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَأَنَّ لَهُ نَارَ جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدًا فِيهَا ذَلِكَ الْخِزْيُ الْعَظِيمُ. Do they not know that the one who opposes God and His Messenger deserves the fire of hell, where he will live forever? This is the great humiliation. So, again, the topic of the hypocrites is still continuing, and here it is said that anyone who opposes God and His Messenger deserves to be punished in the fire of hell, and there will be no chance of that person's coming out of the fire ever. He will live forever in the fire. Now it is said that disgrace is the spiritual aspect of the punishment. This is the great humiliation, it says. ذَلِكَ الْخِزْيُ الْعَظِيمُ. This is the great humiliation. So disgrace is the spiritual aspect of the punishment, and fire, it is said, is the physical aspect of the punishment. Now there is a spiritual explanation of this verse number 60, in which the different people who are eligible for zakat had been mentioned. And here it is said that this is a spiritual allegory. Bestowal of spiritual blessings and illumination on the poor in spirit, those working for spiritual purposes, those whose hearts are to be reconciled with their beloved, that means God, and those who are debtors in giving all they have, that means if they have given away in charity whatever they have, then they can also be helped spiritually as well as materially. And those who strive in the way of God against their souls, that is, they do jihad bin nafs. Now, everything that we had read now, this is being translated into spiritual terms. And they are striving not in the field of war, battle, but they are striving against their own souls. That is known as the jihad bin nafs, which in a certain hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that this is the greater jihad, because it's more difficult to control one's habits and whatever inner emotions and feelings, sentiments that one has, or habits even, rather than to go and fight a battle in a war. So this is a greater jihad, and this is a jihad that is continuous. It is one has to fight this day in and day out, 24 hours of the day, all the time, every little thing and every big thing, whatever it is, one has to be sure that one is doing it according to the commands of God, and that is the jihad bin nafs. Also now we had mentioned the travelers, and in these spiritual terms it means those who travel in search of knowledge. I think I'd like to repeat the heads under which the obligatory zakat has to be given to make it a little more clear, because this is something we are dealing with every day. The list in verse number 60 refers to those heads under which the obligatory tax of zakat can be disbursed. First is the poor and needy. And according to Karam Shah, who is a scholar, fuqara, those who have something, and miskeen, those who have nothing. Then secondly, those who work for the distribution of the funds. Third, those who can be helped to come to the right path, to come to accept Islam. 4, as ransom for captives or the freeing of slaves. And today this can apply to prisoners who have been unjustly caught. And 5th is to help people pay off their debt. And then again you have to make sure that the person is not spending, supposing there is a person who's spending on drugs or alcohol or something like that, and then he comes every month and says, I'm in debt. So now you have to think whether you want to help him or not. Because then if you help him, that means you're helping him to continue with his bad habit. Then any good cause which is taken up for the sake of God, this can include works of charity as well as the spreading of the word of God, and according to some scholars it can mean the preparing of Islamic scholars so that they can go and teach other people. Then the travelers who are away from home in some kind of need. And we know that the Prophet gave the rate of the zakat as 2.5%. And if you calculate this, you find that this comes to 1/40th of the value of the assets owned. For example, if a person has, say, for example, 40,000 pounds or $40,000, and he has had that money in his care for a whole year, then by the end of it, he will have to give away $1,000 in charity, in zakat. So it works out, this is another easy way of calculation. Just calculate 1/40th of what you have. And this has to be given away every year. And there are some women who have a lot of jewelry, and their husbands say, we can't pay so much zakat. So what they're supposed to do is sell off some of their jewelry. If they want to keep that jewelry, sell some of it off and then pay their zakat through it. If you want to calculate 2.5% of your assets, you can do that. If you want to calculate 1/40th of what you have, then you can do that. And the purpose of this is to prevent capital from being hoarded. And the purpose is to keep it in constant circulation so that you keep giving it away, and then the money does not just sit in one or two people's hands. And also the meaning of the word zakah is purification, to purify. And we believe that when a person gives zakat on the assets, then the wealth is cleansed, it becomes clean, and this person also becomes spiritually purified. I hope now the topic of zakat has become clear because we've done it in quite some detail. About property, like immovable property, if one has invested in some plots or a house, for example, if one has invested, there is one house in which you live and you invested in another house as an investment so that it will grow. You do not have to pay zakat on it every year, but if you have given it on rent, if you have bought a second house, given it on rent, then you have to pay zakat on that rent. If you have invested in a plot, then what you have to do is, when and if you sell that plot, then on that amount, once you have to pay the zakat. The question is, what if the husband can pay the zakat on the jewelry that the woman possesses, but he refuses to pay it? Then I think it is the prerogative of the husband, if he doesn't want to pay, since he's not asking her to keep that jewelry, and she's the one who's interested in the jewelry. So if he does not want to pay the zakat on it, then the woman will have to make her own arrangements, either by selling some of the jewelry or whatever else other means she might have. But she cannot force the husband to pay the zakat, because that is wholly and solely in her possession. The husband is not benefiting from it. So it's the duty of the woman to pay the zakat because she is the owner of that wealth. And I know some women who were given a really, big amount of gold jewelry when they got married, And now the husband cannot afford to pay so much of zakat, so she sells the jewelry every year, some of it. And still, mashallah, she has a lot of it left. Now we have come to verse number 64. يَحْذَرُ الْمُنَافِقُونَ أَن تُنَزَّلَ عَلَيْهِمْ سُورَةٌ تُنَبِّئُهُم بِمَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ قُلِ اسْتَهْزِئُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ مُخْرِجٌ مَا تَحْذَرُونَ. The hypocrites constantly fear that a surah might be revealed informing the believers about the secrets of their hearts. Say, Qul, keep mocking. God is about to expose that which you fear. Now the hypocrites, even though they do not believe in Islam and the Prophet and the revelation, they still believe enough that they know that they are afraid that at some time a revelation might come to the Prophet in which he will be told, who are the hypocrites and what harm they are trying to do to the believers. And they were aware of his ability to know their secret thoughts, and because of this, if they were disrespectfully mocking him, and then they were afraid that he would come to know, because they were not doing it to his face, and they were afraid that he would come to know about it. This, according to some commentators, they think that maybe they had a small level of faith, a low level of faith, but because of the jealousy and stubbornness would not commit themselves to the faith. And the jealousy was mainly among the people of the book, people who had already received the book through their prophet, and they had, especially the Bani Israelis, they had believed, since so many prophets had come to them, the past prophets had all come to them, they believed, their book also mentioned that the last prophet would be coming, and he was described in detail in their book. And they had assumed that the last prophet would be from among their community. But when he turned out to be from among the Arabs and not from the Jews, then they became antagonistic, because this was out of jealousy and stubbornness. So, if they are afraid that they might be exposed, that means they have some kind of little faith that this prophet can receive some information about us. وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ لَيَقُولُنَّ إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ وَنَلْعَبُ قُلْ أَبِاللَّهِ وَآيَاتِهِ وَرَسُولِهِ كُنْتُمْ تَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. And if you question them, they will say, we were simply joking playfully. Say, were you joking about God and His revelations and His messenger? So you see, they do not have that kind of respect which a believer has, that when they are asked, did you say these things? They say, we were just joking, we were just, playfully talking about these things. But these things are very serious, they're not to be made a joke out of. And it is said that once a hypocrite spoke disparagingly about Prophet Muhammad and the Quran. And then this person came to the Prophet and said, he must have realized that this will be reported to the Prophet. He said, we were just only joking and passing our time. And at this, the Prophet read out the verse number 65, which I have just read, which implies the seriousness of joking about these sublime matters. This is the opinion of Allama Razi and Tabari. So also we should learn from this that the matters of faith are not to be trifled with. One should not joke about these things. If you remember in Surah Al-Baqarah, when the people came to Hazrat Musa a.s. and the Prophet Musa a.s. said, Moses said, you have been asked to slaughter a cow. So they kept asking all kinds of questions in order to make it so difficult that they thought that then they might not have to slaughter a cow. But then they did have to slaughter it. And then when they said something about, we were just joking, and the Prophet said, this is not a matter, I'm using my own words, this is not a matter which has to be trifled with. One is not supposed to joke about matters which concern God and His prophets. I remember this lady who had a very good sense of humor, and she was also always cracking jokes. And she had just recently accepted Islam, and she had so much to learn. And one day she was joking. She had a long list of jokes about Hazrat Dawood a.s. David, that is, Dawood a.s. So then I said to her, we believe that he was a prophet of God, and we don't joke about him. especially in this manner. And this was something new to her. So here these people are also being asked, were you joking about God and His revelations and His messenger? This is not something to be joked about. لا تعتذروا قد كفرتم بعد إيمانكم إن نعفو عن طائفة منكم نعذب طائفة بأنهم كانوا مجرمين. Do not make excuses. You have disbelieved after believing. Even if we forgive a group from among you, we will punish the other group, for they are the real culprits. So do not make excuses like here. This is referring to excuses about going on a holy war, on a campaign. So do not make excuses about this. And you have disbelieved after believing. This is an even greater sin than just not believing, because after you have believed and then you leave the faith, then this is a greater sin. Some people believe that if a person becomes a murtad, that is, he disbelieves after believing, then he deserves the capital punishment of death. But I don't think so. I think only those murtads, those who have apostatized, who have left the faith after believing in it, only those who are trying to create some kind of mischief, they're trying to spread corruption in some form or the other, then if they have, there's sedition or some other thing like this against the state, then the state has a right to give them the punishment. And if he deserves a capital punishment, then he will be given that punishment, but not just for leaving the faith. So here is two groups have been mentioned. According to some commentators, there was one group which initiated the mockery, the making fun of the faith. And there was another group which listened passively and just laughed at it. Even if we forgive a group from among you, we will punish the other group. That means maybe the group which initiated all this will be punished, and the one which was just passively sitting and enjoying this might be forgiven, especially if they ask for forgiveness. And also some commentators think that this means that the one group would repent and the other group would not repent. No matter how major and how serious a sin one has committed, if one asks for forgiveness, God is always ready and waiting to forgive that person, and except that one should do it before one has seen death approaching him. And that one says one can see the angel of death, and after you see the angel of death and you say, I ask for forgiveness, then it is too late, such as the case of Pharaoh. He was trying to run after and catch the people of Moses, Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. And when he started to drown, then he said, I believe in the God of Musa and Harun. But then it was said, it is now too late. Al-munafiquna wal-munafiqatu ba'duhum min ba'd ya'muruna bil-munkari wa yanhauna 'anil ma'rufi wa yaqbiduna aydiyahum nasullaha wa nasiyahum innal munafiqina humul fasiqun. Hypocritical men as well as hypocritical women are similar. They prescribe the evil and discourage the good and are stingy. They have forgotten God, so He ignores them. Indeed, the hypocrites are the transgressors. Now, of course, if the hypocritical men and the women have the same kind of belief or lack of belief, then they will be similar in a lot of ways, and they will probably be people from the same community. So what is the main thing that they do? They prescribe the evil and discourage the good. Now, we have been asked to do Amar bil Maruf and Nahi Anil Munkar, but they do just the opposite. They prescribe the evil and it says Yamaruna bil Munkari, that is, they prescribe the evil, and Yanhona Anil Maruf, that is, they discourage the good. So they are doing the opposite of what a good believer is supposed to do, obviously, because they are not believers. So they are also stingy. Stingy, maybe they spend a lot on themselves, but they are not willing to spend in the cause of God or for the believers. In fact, they used to make fun in Surah Yasin, I think it is said that, or is it Surah Mulk? Anyway, it is said that they make fun of the fact that God has asked them to give in charity. They say, is God not able to feed these people? That He's asking us to do it? If God wanted to feed them, He could have done it Himself. So they didn't realize that this was being done for their own good. If a person is being asked to help somebody and that person complies, he goes and helps that person either monetarily or in some other way, then what has that helper done? He has earned some reward for himself. So whatever has been recommended in the Quran, has been recommended by the Prophet, this is for the own good of the believer. So when the hypocrites are prescribing exactly the opposite of what the Quran says, then they are the transgressors, they are the fasiqun. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْمُنَافِقِينَ وَالْمُنَافِقَاتِ وَالْكُفَّارَ نَارَ جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا هِيَ حَسْبُهُمْ فَلَعْنَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُقِيمٌ. God has promised the hypocritical men and the hypocritical women and the unbelievers the fire of hell in which they will abide forever. This is sufficient for them. Besides, they will be removed from God's grace and their punishment will be everlasting. La'anahumullah, we are familiar with this word la'nat, and this means to be distanced or removed from God's grace. And this is like a curse. If one is distanced from God, is removed from God's mercy and His blessings and His rahmah, then that person really can find no help anywhere, neither in this world nor in the next. So this is a great punishment. It's like a curse. كَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ كَانُوا أَشَدَّ مِنْكُمْ قُوَّةً وَأَكْثَرَ أَمْوَالًا وَأَوْلَادًا فَاسْتَمْتَعُوا بِخَلَاقِهِمْ فَاسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِخَلَاقِكُمْ كَمَا اسْتَمْتَعَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ بِخَلَاقِهِمْ وَخُضْتُمْ كَالَّذِي خَاضُوا أُولَئِكَ حَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ وَأُولَئِكَ هُمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. Like those hypocrites who went before you, who were even greater in strength and possessed more wealth and children. This is referring to other nations who were destroyed earlier, and many of them were also hypocrites. So who were even greater in strength and possessed more wealth and children. So everything that desires in this world they possessed. They were physically strong and they had material wealth and they had children and they enjoyed their share in this world. So this was the share in this world which they enjoyed thoroughly without any desire for the next world. You also enjoyed your share. This is referring to the hypocrites of the time of the Prophet. You also enjoyed your share just as those who went before you enjoyed their share. You became immersed in pleasure just as they were immersed. They are the ones whose good deeds have been wasted in this world as well as the next. They are the losers. So, in spite of having everything that one could desire in this world, they were not successful in the next world. So they just enjoyed their share in this world. And you also enjoyed your share just as those who went before you. You became immersed in pleasure. A learned word for those who just want to enjoy the pleasure, the pleasure of everything that they can think of, material pleasures, and that word is hedonist. That you think of nothing but pleasure. You want the, best food, and you want the best clothes, and you want the best everything, and just material benefits. So these people were living a hedonistic life, and this is a kind from the spiritual point of view, or the point of view of the Quran, or the point of view of the Prophet. This living just simply for pleasure is like wasting your life in this world. They are the ones whose good deeds have been wasted in this world. The expression habitat amalum, that means wasted are all their good deeds. So that means if a person does a lot of good things, but he does not believe in God and the prophets, then all his good deeds will be wasted, and in the next world he will not get any reward for the good things that he has done, and they will be the losers. Alam ya'tihim naba'ul lazina min qablihim qawmi Nuhin Ghadim wa Samuda wa qawmi Ibrahima wa ashabi Madyana wal mutafikat atathum rusuluhum bil bayyinat fama kana Allahu liyazlimahum walakin kanu anfusahum yazlimun. Did they not receive news of those who were before them? The people of Nuh, that is Noah, Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam, and Ad was the nation and their prophet was Hud alayhi salam, and Samud was the nation whose prophet was Prophet Salih alayhi salam, the one who was famous for the she-camel that he produced out of a rock. And the people of Ibrahim and the dwellers of Madian, that is the nation of Prophet Shuaib alayhi salam. And those who were overturned, this is supposed to be the nation of Hazrat Lut alayhi salam, that is Lot. And they had come to them their messengers with clear signs. God did not wrong them, but they wronged themselves. So by not listening, not heeding to the teachings of their prophets, they wronged themselves, and then they, of course, became eligible for the punishment. If anyone is interested in the stories of these prophets, then one can look up Surah 11. Surah 11 is Surah Hud. We have finished up to verse number 70 of Surah At-Taubah, and inshallah, next time we will be starting from verse number 71. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azaban nar wa adkhilna al-jannata ma'al abrar ya azizu ya ghaffar ya rabbil alamin bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Ameen summa ameen. Thank you everyone for your time, and inshallah we'll see you next week. Jazakallah khair.